The third deadly sin we're going to look at is envy, and then we'll look at love, which, as we mentioned in the introduction, was considered the opposite of envy. So, envy is defined as a feeling of discontent and ill will because of another's advantages, possessions, and so on. And that's in Webster's New World College Dictionary. It continues, resentful dislike of another who has something that one desires. It's very similar to greed, as it's wanting something that we don't have. However, with greed, it's irrelevant who has the desired object. It's the object itself which is the focus of attention. Envy, however, not only wants something that someone else already has, but it also tends to dislike the person who has it. It's very similar to covetousness in the 10th commandment. Although greed is more specifically to do with wealth and possessions, envy also relates to other people's traits, status, abilities, and their situation in life as well. Today, much of our modern advertising is based upon provoking this very feeling. We're shown a wonderful product that we don't have, and we're also shown people who do have whatever is being promoted. And they're always depicted as good-looking and healthy and successful and contented people. The formula works like magic. Viewers become envious of those who have the product, and they want to have their own. Advertising relies very heavily upon people being discontented with what they already have, and being envious of those who have something better than they do. It's the proverbial keeping up with the Joneses syndrome. However, when all is said and done, this is an impersonal form of envy. It's worse when the envy is focused upon people we know personally. Then it can cause all sorts of problems in our relationships if we continually or even occasionally feel envious of work colleagues or neighbours or friends or even of family. As modern advertising was not around when the scriptures were written, the Bible has more to say about envying those that we come into contact with daily. Advertising causes a general and pervasive feeling of discontent, whereas envy of people we come into contact with can cause huge personal conflicts if it's allowed to develop. Proverbs 14 verse 30 says, "A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones." If envy is allowed to develop, it can gnaw away at a person, destroying any hope of acting kindly towards the person who's the object of our envy. It's very difficult to act in a loving manner towards someone that we envy. If we're satisfied with what we have in life, whether it's goods and possessions or whether it's personality, traits and talents, then we'll be at peace, as Proverbs says. If we're content with our lot, discontent with our lot, and always wishing for something more, then we'll seldom be happy. And as Proverbs puts it, it will rot the bones. Proverbs 23 verse 17 says, "Do not let your heart envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord." If we have our priorities right, it's unlikely that we'll be envious of sinners, that is, unbelievers, as well as have our hearts set on being zealous for the Lord. However, how many of us can say that we always have our priorities right 100% of the time? Very few, I imagine. It may be easy at times of weakness to wish that we had something that someone else has. It might be money or status or possessions, or it could be their relationships, their social position, or a particular ability that they possess. Whatever it is, we should try to be content with what we have and learn to be content in all situations so that we can echo with Paul, "I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation." That's Philippians 4 verse 12. Contentment is not something many are born with, but it can and it should be cultivated through practice. Ecclesiastes 4 verse 4 says, "And I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind." This is a sad statement on the human condition made by Solomon. Whether he's universally correct in this observation is doubtful, but certainly it was true of many of the people that he observed. envy may well be an overriding motivation for unbelievers, but hopefully for believers, the motivation for much of our labour and achievement is to help others and bring glory to the Lord. At the very least, this should be the desire of our hearts, even if the practice is missing now and again. Turning to the New Testament, James 3 verse 16 says, "For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice." These are strong words, but true, and probably the reason envy was originally included in the list of the 7 deadly sins. Envy may not be seen to be terribly harmful at first glance, but it's what it leads to which is the problem. That's why we should nip it in the bud and try to replace it with a feeling of contentment with what we already have. To learn to continually appreciate everything that we already have is a considerable achievement and something I think that we have to foster on a daily basis. In the great chapter on love, 1 Corinthians 13 verse 4 tells us, "Love does not envy." If we're to love others as ourselves, then we will not envy them. We can't envy those that we love. We will instead look on their good fortune and be genuinely happy for them. When we're able to do this, we may begin to be a little like Paul, who learned to be content, whatever his circumstances. And now on to love. It may seem strange that the opposite of envy was considered to be love. After all, love encompasses so many different virtues. However, in general, love actively seeks the good of others for their sake, whereas envy resents the good others have. In this sense, they are complete opposites. The dictionary definition in love is not a great value when considering what this means in the Bible, as it's more concerned with feelings and emotion. In the Bible, the special word agape is used, which was previously unknown in Greek literature. Vine's Expository Dictionary describes love in the Bible like this: Christian love, whether exercised towards the brethren or towards men generally, is not an impulse from the feelings. It does not always run with the natural inclinations, and nor does it spend itself only upon those for whom some affinity is discovered. This is very clear in describing what it is not. It then goes on to say what it is. Love seeks the welfare of all and works no ill to any. Love seeks opportunity to do good to all men, and especially towards them that are of the household of faith. William Barclay gives a lovely definition of agape in the New Testament, volume 2. Agape is unconquerable benevolence, undefeatable goodwill. It is the spirit which will never seek anything but the other person's good, no matter what the other person does. Clearly then, in the Bible, love has nothing to do with emotion and feeling. It is rather doing the right thing at the right time, all the time, to everyone we meet, rather a tall order, but something that we can aspire to. Many people have attempted to describe exactly what biblical love is all about. And there is another description of it in this paragraph on the internet, which says this: "To love as God loves is to love without reason, without thought of return, without bound. It is to desire the best for others, but not to decide what is best for them. It's to desire happiness for others, without necessarily knowing what will make them happy. It means helping others reach their potential, but not running their lives. It means involved in others' lives, while keeping our own self-interest out of it. Being willing to suffer great loss, rather than to use the other person for our own benefit." God's love for us is totally selfless. He would like our love for each other to be just like his. He created us with the capacity for such love, and we occasionally catch glimpses of it. What's the Bible's own definition of love? Well, the two passages that contain the most comprehensive definitions of biblical love are 1 Corinthians 13 and Galatians 5. 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 to 8 is, of course, one of the best known passages in the Bible. And it says this: "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails." Galatians 5 verses 22 and 23 says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." And some commentators suggest that the fruit of the Spirit is love itself, and that this encompasses the 8 other attributes which I've just listed, rather than love being one of the 9 fruits of the Spirit. Many books have been written on the subject of love. However, meditating on these 2 passages alone tells us exactly what sort of love pleases God. If we only read these 2 passages before we got out of bed every morning and really tried to put them into practice that day, then I believe our lives and those of others around us would swiftly be transformed beyond all recognition.